Welcome back to Questing Beast. I'm Ben. Today we are going to be looking at 4 different D&D adventures. These are the 4 official adventure scenarios created for the Dolmenwood campaign setting. Now, anyone who has seen my review of the Dolmenwood setting that I did previously knows that it is my favorite book of 2025 and one of my favorite settings of all time. It does have a starter adventure inside, but primarily it's a hex crawl. So how do these individual adventures stack up? And all of these can be slotted into the hex crawl in different places. I'll be giving you an overview of all 4 of them, deciding which ones are the best and which ones might not be for you. The adventures are the Ruined Abbey of St. Cloud, the Fungus that came to Blackeswell, Imelda's Song, and finally Winter's Daughter, which I have looked at in the past. Before we look at them though, a reminder that I will put links in the description below for where you can pick all of these books up in print or PDF form if you want to get copies for yourself. And if you buy the print copies from Exalted Funeral, you can get a discount by using my code QuestingBeast. Let's start off with this one, The Ruined Abbey of St. Cloud, written by Gavin Norman, who's the author of Dolmenwood, and Eve Keynes is, I think, how you pronounce that name. My apologies if I got it wrong. The once proud Abbey of St. Cloud, the Refulgent, has stood in ruins for a century, racked with weird energies and haunted by wicked spirits. Several missions have sought to reclaim the Abbey and quell the tides of chaos. All have failed. What treasures lie untouched within, ripe for the picking? Can the mystery of the Abbey's ruination be unraveled and the forces of chaos be vanquished? So this is an adventure for levels 4 through 6, and it has this new format, which is similar to what we've seen with Necrotic Gnomes books in the past, but definitely spruced up a bit. Inside front cover has a great map showing the above ground region of the Ruined Abbey. You can see the chapel and the gatehouse and the different areas here, but most of it's going to be taking place underground where all the weirdness is happening. I should point out that I have actually run this adventure, or at least part of it, in the past, because this was released as part of the Wormskin zines back in the day. However, I think it has been changed a bit and improved for this new release. All of these adventures say that the required books to have are the 3 Dolmenwood core books, which is sort of true. There are references to magic items and character classes and things like that you're going to get more information from in the main books. But by and large, I think these adventures could be slotted into a standard old school style campaign without too much trouble. The background here is that St. Cloud was a saint, one of the many saints of Dolmenwood, who fought Sallobrig, who is this force of chaos. He sacrificed his life by diving into the realm of chaos to combat this beast and the rift close behind him. But much later, an abbot of the monastery dedicated to him decided to try and summon him back to the land of the living. And of course, the ritual goes horribly awry, and both the saint and the demon creature get summoned back and get merged together into this horrible being. Since then, that abbot and all of his monks have sworn the sacred oath to tend to this creature in the basement of the abbey and not let it escape for as long as they need to. The chaos rift that they opened is now causing all sorts of problems for the surrounding area, but recently it has died down a bit, allowing adventurers to get closer to the abbey and start figuring out what's going on there, and of course, try and find the treasures within. As with all of Gavin Norman and Necrotic Gnomes books, the layout is really good. It's extremely clean and easy to use, and it's even better than the ones that I've seen before. The use of color in the different titles helps differentiate things really well. Whenever there's a random table, there's this nice bar on the side, which makes it get set apart very clearly. There's lots of page number to easily reference things in different parts of the book. Bolding is always used. The stat blocks are very clear and easy to read. The characterizations are always really good as well. For example, you might meet the ghost of Brother Chade, hunchbacked and sorrowful. His last wish is for the PCs to pray for his behalf at the tomb of Prior Jerome Gust at Maidenhead Priory, hex 0206, because there's lots of references in here to specific hexes in the main book. They are very tightly integrated with each other. And he can tell you a secret if you fulfill his wish. A secret escape stair from the crypts was added in the abbot's residence. So as you're prowling around on the surface, getting into these weird little encounters and meeting some ghosts, you can get more information about how to approach the dungeon underneath. For each different location description, there's a little text block here. It isn't exactly read aloud text. It's really just a summary of the most important things that are in bold, with things that are in parentheses, kind of a zoomed in detail that you can tell the players if they get closer to it. There's always great little mini maps on every page that give you a picture of the area that you're in when it comes to the text of the area descriptions. This means you don't have to flip back and forth to maps in the front or in the back. It's always right there in front of you. One of the weird creatures you might run into is Mr. Rag'n'Bone, who is a glome. This is a big flock or a murder of crows that flies around and then can coalesce into this weird being right here. He has hypnotized a number of children up inside this tower that you can ascend. And maybe you can break the curse that has them enthralled and defeat him, because if you don't, then he's going to be running off into the forest and finding more kids to take under his wing, so to speak. Prowling around on the surface, you're going to find a number of interesting locations. There's some secrets that you can unlock if you are very careful and cautious and you poke and prod at things. I tend to enjoy that. For example, there's an area up here, a series of mosaics depicting the life of St. Cloud. And if you look at them really carefully and you study them, they're going to be very useful once you get down into the crypts. And in true old school fashion, the crypt underneath does not have just one entrance. There's kind of a main way down, but then there are multiple other ways to also arrive. And the way that you arrive can dramatically affect how the adventure turns out if you find these other secret entrances. Some of the magic items up here are really great as well. For example, a mother locket, a plain oval-shaped locket on a delicate silver chain. If you unclasp it, it reveals an image of the viewer's mother in her current state, including if deceased. The viewer may converse with her mother up to once a day for D6 minutes. The magic functions even if she is deceased and in another plane of reality. That's so great. I love that. Another thing you might meet is a red slob, which is a type of large ooze. And if you try and hit it with a weapon, your weapon could get stuck to it, and then it can grab that weapon and wield it against you. So if you keep trying to bash on it with all of your weapons, it'll just grab them all, and now you're fighting a multi-tentacled being that's hacking at you with your own swords and spears. Once you descend the main steps down into the crypts, things are going to get much stranger because the chaos of the rift is causing a lot of trouble. There could be psychedelic hued phantoms that are drifting from the walls, or the PC's voices are replaced by a singing church choir for one turn. Maybe the nature of light is reversed for one turn. Dark areas are illuminated and light sources become pools of darkness. A bunch of undead abbots from previous years are lurking down here in the crypts, and you may have to fight them. There's some animated cherubs. The Chaos Rift itself is extremely dangerous. As you get closer to it, the number of chaos events increases. And if you physically touch it, then you're just going to be straight up annihilated. You can close it by finding the body of the weird creature that's imprisoned down here and throwing it back into the rift. There's plenty of just fun locations to encounter, like an undercroft full of chattering skulls that might give you a little bit of a clue as to what's going on down here. A bunch of the prior's tombs that you can loot, one of which has a secret passage behind it. There is a giant catfish down here, which is not necessarily hostile. You can possibly make friends with it, and it might give you missions and information about things happening elsewhere within the Dolmenwood setting. In one area, there's a big pool with a hydra in the center, but it's not a normal hydra. It's looks like this. Lots of weird different heads, each of which has different powers, but only one of them can be dominant at a time. If you try and fight it, it's probably going to wipe you out. It's a level 10 creature. It really wants to eat the flesh of the current abbot. So if you feed the abbot to it, then it's going to let you get past into this room over here, which is full of lots of great treasure. The treasure room is full of all sorts of weird stuff, some of which has been warped by chaos. For example, there's some bars of gold here, but when they're exposed to light, they start slowly shrinking until they vanish after 7 days. In the western part of the crypts is where all of the monks are hiding out. And there's a whole bunch of monks here, and they all have an appearance and a personality, so you can play a whole bunch of them if you want to and make it more of a social experience. There's even a bit of faction play down here because there's one group of monks that wants to stay down here and doesn't think that they can leave, another group that does want to actually escape. And if you enter through one of the secret passages, they realize that there is an escape route, and that can cause possibly a civil war inside the monastery. So you're going to be investigating this part of the monastery, figuring out what's going on. Most of the monks are fine, but some of them have been reanimated as undead, which they might unleash on you if you cause too much trouble. And they're also not going to like it if you try and meet with the Charge, the weird creature that's a mixture of the saint and the demon that they have imprisoned in part of the monastery. There's a number of secret areas to explore, some of which have nice little clues, especially if you look at the architecture very carefully, that might indicate where the secret doors are. I always like that because I don't like it to be totally random. There should be a way to find this stuff out. And here is the Charge himself, shackled in part of the monastery, kept away from the world. And he's very dangerous. He's a level 10 creature. But if you manage to actually kill him, the saint's soul will depart from him and thank you for freeing him. But if you allow him to escape, he's going to run off into the woods and cause absolutely untold harm. Ideally, what you want to do is probably try and release him and then lure him towards the Chaos Rift so you can throw him in, because that will not only kill him, it will also kill all of the monks, or at least free them from this perpetual cycle that they are trapped in. This is a great little adventure from my experience running it and from reading it again after a number of years. It's got social interaction, it's got mysteries, it's got monsters that you can fight or that you can talk to. It's got some faction play. There's multiple ways to approach it. It has all of those little elements that I love to see in a D&D adventure. The thing that might make it a little bit tough is just the number of different monks and all of their personalities. That might be a little bit overwhelming to kind of throw the game master into that and having to figure out how to roleplay all of these people and all of their desires. But overall, very flavorful, lots of great variety. I would love to try running this again. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the fungus that came to Blackeswell. But first, a quick shout out to today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by my favorite apparel company, Into the AM. Winter is coming on, so these days I am living practically 24/7 in their jackets and hoodies. I especially love this waffle knit hoodie, which is super comfortable and goes really well with whatever I'm wearing. I would also recommend that you check out their flannels, which I wear all the time, and I just saw that if you buy them in a bundle, they're on a big discount right now. Always remember to use my link in the description below if you want to get 10% off of everything on Into the AM's web store. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this video, and now, let's get back to it. All right, what do we get in the fungus that came to Blackeswell? Fungal apocalypse has ravaged the isolated village of Blackeswell, blanketing the streets in blanched mycelia, waving eerily to an unheard rhythm. The village is to be razed to the ground, but the bold may be able to get in and out before the troops arrive. Can any living souls be saved, and can the fungal investigation be reversed? So this is for slightly lower levels, levels 2 through 3, and as usual, can actually be slotted into a hex in the Dolmenwood hex map. In essence, this is an extraction mission. You are sent to this village to figure out what's going on, rescue as many survivors and loot as you can, and then get out, hopefully ending the plague or maybe just surviving with your life. The main issue is that a wizard has moved to the area and has become interested in this huge mycelial or fungal network underneath the region that is one giant consciousness. And he's decided that he's going to become immortal by fusing himself somehow with this giant fungal intelligence. Needless to say, this is a very bad idea. Instead, it fuses itself with him, making him, yes, immortal, but now part of this fungal intelligence. He's pretty much wiped out, and the fungus bursts to life, takes over the entire area, and transforms many of the people living in the village above. The Pluraltine Church has heard about this and is going to be sending in some people to burn the place to the ground, and you need to do what you need to do in the village before this happens. It could be that you're sent on an errand of mercy by a group that wants to get survivors out before it's burned down, or maybe you're there on an arcane rescue and retrieval operation. It's a fairly eerie adventure in that you are wandering around this destroyed village, finding infected townspeople, possibly being assaulted by fungal zombies, and trying to find as much loot and survivors as you can. Like maybe Kurth Goodwine, who's one of the survivors, rings the church bell, causing 2d6 plus 4 infested villagers to run wailing through the streets for one turn, accosting PCs if they are not soon indoors. So you might be overrun by all of these fungal people. Now, the main criticism that I would have of this adventure is that it's just a lot less interactive. There's a lot less variety than the previous one. As you can see on this map here, there's quite a few locations above ground, and I would say most of them don't have a whole lot going on in them. This isn't universally true. You do find some cool locations that have a person to talk to. Maybe you find a workshop that has a cool magic item that you can use. Like in the workshop, you might find this lightning rod where you can zap creatures. It's very good against some of the robots that are walking around because there was a mad inventor in the village as well. There's a handgun that allows you to fire these gears that can ricochet around and hurt people. But many of the dwellings are pretty plain and pretty nondescript. Maybe there's a few coins in it. Maybe there's a little bit of information you can pick up as to who used to live here. But frequently, you'll be searching these rooms pretty thoroughly and come away with, well, not a lot going on in there. If you're lucky, you run into one of the NPCs, like one of the survivors, Simeone Chunkwell and Roger Malksmilk, magicians, who are hiding out. A few people have survived the apocalypse that has struck this village and are barricaded themselves indoors away from the danger. But I would like to see more levers and knobs to push and pull, ways to maybe control the mycelia and control the zombies, maybe more factions that you can use to turn one against another, instead of just a pretty procedural house by house crawl, going through the door, poking around, deciding there's nothing in there, go into the next house. Overall, it needs more held kinetic energy. There should be a sense of things going really bad. And the main way things can go really bad is that you get overrun by too many of the fungus people. Overall, I wouldn't call this a bad adventure per se. It's not a railroad. It's very open. It lets you explore things at your own pace. You can try and find the different NPCs and put together your own team and maybe fight back against the creatures or maybe just sneak through the town. But I think the hook needs to be a bit stronger and it needs to have some more interesting things to do. At the end, you head down to the caves beneath the village where the whole fungus network is hanging out, and meet the wizard who has been turned into this, puppet of the fungus. If you manage to finish him off, then the fungus mostly disintegrates, and you've probably saved the town because the paladins heading there will likely not need to destroy it. If you don't kill the wizard at all, then the fungus will take over the village completely and grow until it's possibly a much bigger threat to the region. However, if you don't do either of these things, then the church troops will arrive eventually and begin putting everything to the torch. One thing is that I kind of think this adventure would be better if the troops arrived earlier, because that gives another faction for you to actually work off of. That adds some more tension to the scenario, right? Because in that case, maybe you're trying to get loot or get survivors as the town is being torched. That's a much more dynamic situation. Okay, next we're looking at Imelda's Song by Scott Malthouse. The market town of Lankshorn is abuzz with excitement after the cruel Lord Malbleet announces a festival honoring his sorceress ancestor. Only when the young singer Imelda, famous for her beautiful voice, is reported missing do things take a sinister turn. This is again a low-level adventure about the same as the fungus that came to Blackeswell, levels 2 through 4. And this is a much more dynamic situation that I really enjoyed reading. Once again, you have a town right here, and then you will also be delving into the crypts down beneath it. But the way that it's been set up, there's a lot of things going on that can interfere with each other and cause a lot of excitement and a lot of dynamism. The basics is that we have Lord Malbleet, who is this goat man, who is one of the normal species in Dolmenwood. And he's decided that he wants to resurrect his ancestor, who is this ancient wizard, and put this ancestor under his control so that it will increase his own power. In order to do this, he needs this book of necromancy, the Book of Foul Wonders, and he also needs a beautiful and powerful song, which is why he's kidnapped Imelda. His goal is to hypnotize her, have her sing this song while he's performing the ritual, and that will bring his ancestor back to life again. And I'm sure there will be no consequences from this. What makes this interesting is that all of this is happening during a big festival that he is putting on, because part of his goal is that at the height of the festival, he will walk out and bring out his ancient ancestor that he's resurrected, and everyone will be amazed and love him or fear him. This all takes place near the town of Lankshorn, which is a settlement in Dolmenwood. You can look it up in the book, and so this is going to be placed right near that hex. And the hooks can come from a couple of angles. It could be that someone wants you to find Imelda, like her aunt has noticed that she's missing and you need to track her down. Or it could be other factions in Dolmenwood have heard rumors about what Lord Malbleet is trying to do and want you to investigate and possibly stop him. So you arrive in time for this festival, and there's all these tents set up, and there's people everywhere. Fire eaters, there's knife jugglers, there's puppet theaters going on, there's fortune tellers, there's guards walking around. It's total chaos. But as you're poking around the grounds, there's plenty of things to discover. Like you might find that this hole out here in the woods, which leads to a tunnel that goes all the way back to the main town of Lankshorn, where Imelda was kidnapped. Examining the chapel, you can find a hidden key and a secret passage under the altar that takes you down into the catacombs, a passage that even Lord Malbleet does not know about. Another possible entrance is in the groundsman's cottage. There's a little trap door down here in the corner that he's not going to want you to touch. But he's very annoyed that he doesn't get invited to the fancy parties that everyone else is going to. So if you bring him some nice food, he'll get much more chatty about what he knows. And you might even get him drunk or stuffed full of food enough that he falls asleep. What you might really want to do is get into the Shadholm Lodge, which is the main building right here where the more fancy party is going on. If you're not already invited to get in here, you might have to sneak your way in or trick your way in, which is always a lot of fun. There's a solid 20 different guests here, all of which have an appearance, a personality, and their station, so you can just have a bunch of role-playing going on in here as you try and milk them for information. Inside the lodge, there's a number of other ways to get down into the crypts, but there's guards that are actually guarding them, or there are cooks going up and down these stairs and they don't want you to go down. So if you want to get down there without anyone noticing, you should probably start creating distractions. Light something on fire, challenge one of the nobles to a duel, anything to get the guards distracted and get the crowd riled up so that you can slip past. The upper crypts themselves are not huge and not super complicated, but just the sheer number of ways that you can possibly enter means that there are many different approaches and ways that this could shake out. For example, if you drop down this secret passage that even Lord Malbleet does not know about, then you'll be able to ambush the guards that are over here and possibly get over to some of the prisoners. If you sneak down here, you can meet one of the people that Lord Malbleet has imprisoned as part of his plan to do this ceremony, and this guy can give you a lot more information. There are sprites that you can rescue. You can go to the alchemist laboratory at the intersection in the middle. This gives you a bunch of weird potions, which are often related to different people in the adventure. For example, if you find this one, Eliza Lank, then you take it over to another part of the dungeon. You can find this woman that's been turned into a giant spider. And if you give it to her, then she'll probably become an ally. There's some nice little tricky social encounters, like you run into, again, the alchemist laboratory, and you meet Beryld Forlock, who is an alchemist, another goat person. And if you give an excuse as to why that you're here, she'll accept it. She'll think, okay, that makes sense. And then she'll sit down and want to serve some tea with you and send one of her assistants off to get that tea. But really, the assistant is going off to get the guards. Down in the lower crypts, you can find Lord Malbleed himself in the process of finishing up his ceremony, which of course you can try and disrupt. If you don't disrupt it, though, the ancestor, Gnarlgruff, will arise from the dead, but not under the control of Malbleed, who has done the ceremony wrong. This creates even more chaos because now you have multiple Goatman wizards, one of which probably hates you, but one of which isn't so sure about you. Maybe you can join his side. And then keep in mind that all of this is happening underneath a giant festival. So there's so many ways that this could interact with that. What happens if you convince a whole bunch of the party goers to go down into the dungeon with you? What happens if the resurrected sorcerer bursts out of the tomb and is running rampant through this giant fair where there's people tossing knives and fire spitters and kids running around everywhere? This is a great, tight adventure with lots of different things going on that can all interact with each other, which I think is a great sign for an adventure. All right, lastly, we're going to look at Winter's Daughter. I have done a review of this in the past, but we'll look through it quickly again. This is one of my favorite adventures of all time. I've run it a whole bunch of times. It is a great low-level adventure, a great introduction to Dolmenwood, and has a good amount of interaction. It has wonder, and it has mystery. It has investigation. It has combat. It has really out-of-the-box ways that players can approach things. It's always a fun time, no matter how many times I run it, because it has both this cairn that you are going into and investigating. This is the inside of it right here. But there's also a passage at the very bottom underneath this cairn, this portal that takes you into the world of fairy. So you can walk through here and you find yourself inside this giant frozen forest with a huge tower in the center. There's elements of a love story here as well, because you're trying to reunite the princess who lives in this tower with her lover, who is a ghost buried inside this tomb. I also love how even as a first level adventure, as something that you just start players off with, there's a possibility of it having large ramifications throughout the Dolmenwood timeline. Because the fairy princess that you're trying to get married is the daughter of the Cold Prince, who's this kind of arch enemy who controlled a lot of Dolmenwood in the past. And by getting her married to this human who's a ghost, and well, maybe not a ghost, maybe you can kind of bring him back to life, you're going to be reconnecting fairy with the mortal world, or at least allowing the Cold Prince to possibly pass through. So by getting these lovers together again, you might just possibly condemn the entire wood or cause serious problems for it later on. I love how this new edition of Winter's Daughter adds a lot of illustrations, showing you from a first-person perspective what these areas looked like. I think that's really helpful for players because you can show it to them. Here's this huge tower in the middle of a frozen lake. There's also this huge rift up in the sky, which connects back to the interior of the dungeon in the mortal world. So what my players have done in the past is actually dropped down through this rift in the sky and kind of done this paratroop attack from above on the tower. They were able to pull this off because they had a magic goo on them that made them float. It's in the book, don't worry about it. And other groups have gone right through their front entrance. There's so many ways that this could be approached. If you want to see me run this, I actually have a video on this channel of me running it, along with subtitles that show you what I'm thinking as a game master while I'm running it. So of these 4 adventures, how would I rank them overall? I think Winter's Daughter still remains my favorite Dolmenwood adventure. So I'm going to put that at number 1. I think this is just a great place to start to get into this world. Second place is pretty close between Imelda's Song and the Ruined Abbey. This one is a bit of a larger adventure. There's more things to explore. It's more of a dungeon crawl, a bit more procedural. Whereas this one, I feel like it's more chaotic and more social. It's pretty hard to decide between them. I think I would put the Ruined Abbey a little bit ahead of Imelda's Song, but it might be different depending on the day. The weakest of all 4, I think, is the Fungus that came to Blackeswell, just because there's a lot lower levels of interaction and it's a little bit more bland and you go from room to room, not a whole lot in them. There's less connecting things together. There's less tension in it. And I feel like these do that better. All right, that's my review of all 4 Dolmenwood adventures. Hopefully this was helpful for you. If you have run any of these yourself, please leave your experience down in the comments below. As usual, I will also put links in the description showing where you can pick these up if you want to, and if you use my code QuestingBeast at Exalted Funeral, you will also get a discount when you buy them in hard copy. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.